Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing a Master Duel Shaddoll Invoked Dogmatika deck profile. So I'm really excited to do this one for you guys because this deck was actually suggested to me by one of my patrons, JoyBoy. And this deck is an extremely powerful fusion deck to play on Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel because it summons out some of the coolest fusion monsters in the entire game. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell in there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards. Like in your name, description, every single video, getting assigned cards to the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your Patreon. And definitely give JoyBoy some love down in the comments down below for suggesting such an awesome deck. So let's get straight on into this one, guys. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of the best normal summon in the entire game, 3 copies of Alistair the Invoker. This card has an amazing ability that when this card is normal summoned to your side of the field, you get to add a copy of Invocation from your deck to your hand, which is going to set up a bunch of different fusion plays in this deck, which is amazing. This card is definitely a 3-of in the build and is so easy to get to with cards like Magical Meltdown. It's just a really cool card overall. We then play 2 copies of Shaddoll Windy. Shaddoll Windy is definitely a 2-of in the build, and all of your Shaddolls have a flip effect and a sent to graveyard effect, but you can only get either or of them once per turn. You cannot get both in the same turn. Now this card is an amazing ability if it's flip face up. You can special summon a Shaddoll monster from your deck in face up or face down defense position except another copy of Windy, but if this card is sent to the graveyard by card effect, you can special summon 1 Shaddoll monster from your deck in face down defense position except a copy of Windy. We then play a single copy of Ariel. Ariel's definitely a 1-of in the deck, and it's just amazing right now because this card actually banishes cards from the graveyard. And as you believe this card's flip face up, you get to target one of your banished Shaddoll monsters and special summon in face up or face down defense position. And it also has the ability if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can target up to 3 cards in the graveyards and banish them, which is an amazing ability just to be able to banish cards from the graveyard, especially in this format. We then play a single copy of Shaddoll Beast. Shaddoll Beast is amazing in the deck as a 1-of because this card's ability is flip face up, you get to draw 2 and then discard a card, and if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you get to draw a card. We then play a single copy of Shaddoll Dragon. Shaddoll Dragon is really cool because this card is basically like a compulse. That if this card is flip face up, you get to target 1 card your opponent controls and return it back to the hand. And if it's sent to the graveyard, it's like MST. Then you get to actually target a spell or trap on the field and destroy it. We then play 2 copies of Squamata. Squamata is kind of like Foolish Burial for the deck, which is amazing because it makes any of our Shaddoll monsters go off, which is really cool. And it has the ability, if this card is flip face up, you get to target a monster on the field and destroy it, which is a great effect because this card is kind of like Maneater Bug as well. And if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can actually send 1 Shaddoll card from your deck to the graveyard, which is an amazing ability to get the exact Shaddoll card you want in the graveyard. We then play just a single copy of Ecclesia. You really only need a single copy of Ecclesia in the build, and this card is just amazing in the deck because if a monster is on the field that's special summoned from the extract, you can special summon this card from your hand, which is a really cool effect. And if this card is normal or special summon, you can activate this effect to add a Dogmatika card from your deck to your hand, but you cannot special summon monsters from the extract for the rest of the turn, which is a little bit of a downside, but we can play around that by using this card last. We then play a single copy of Fleur-de-Lis. Fleur-de-Lis is definitely a 1-of and a card you're always searching off your copy of Ecclesia. This card is almost like an infinite impermanence as a monster negate, which is such a cool ability about this card because this card has a crazy powerful effect that during the main phase, if a monster special summon from the extract is on the field, quick effect, you can special summon this card from your hand. Then if you control another Dogmatika monster, you can negate the effect of 1 face-up monster on the field until the end of the turn, which is such a powerful effect to be able to summon out your copy of Ecclesia, search this card, and then use this card as a hand trap, which is just amazing. We then play, for the hand traps, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom's definitely a 3-of just to stop your opponent from touching the deck. We then play 3 copies of Maxi. Maxi is one of the most powerful hand traps ever created, and it's insane that this card is at 3 on Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, letting us draw a card every time our opponent special summons. And then we play 2 copies of Effect Veiler. Effect Veiler is a great card to play in this deck because we do want light monsters in the deck to be able to go in for a copy of Construct, and this card is just really good overall as a hand trap to stop our opponent in their tracks for monster effects, but also a light target in the deck. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to start with a single copy of Foolish Burial. Foolish Burial is a really good one of the deck to get the exact card we need in the graveyard, like one of our Shaddoll monsters to get their effect to go off. We then play a single copy of Crossout Designator. Crossout Designator is a really good one of just to stop your opponent from hand trapping you while you're going in for all of your plays. We then play 2 copies of Called by the Grave. Called by the Grave is exactly the same reason as our copy of Crossout Designator, just to stop our opponent from hand trapping us. We then play a single copy of Triple Tactics Talents. Tactics Talents is amazing as a one-of in the build because we can get to this card with Thrust, but it's really good in the deck because if our opponent does hand trap us or they activate a monster effect during the main phase, we either get to draw 2, take control of an opponent's monster, or look at our opponent's hand and choose a card from it and shuffle it in the deck, which is an amazing effect to use. We then play 2 copies of Triple Tactics Talents. Tactics Talents is really good as a 2-of in the build because this card can get to cards like Shaddoll Fusion, our copies of Foolish Burial, our copies of Triple Tactics Talents. It's just a really good card to be able to play Thrust in the deck because it helps us get to the exact cards that we need. And it's just such a powerful card to be able to play in the deck. You can get to some really good powerhouse cards in the deck, and cards that I usually search is just a copy of Triple Tactics Talents, or I can immediately get to Shaddoll Fusion, which is just insane. We then play 2 copies of Invocation. Invocation is what we always search off our copy of Alistair when it's normal summoned to our side of the field. And this card lets us fusion summon a fusion monster from our extract using monsters from our hand as fusion material. And if you're summoning an invoked fusion monster this way, you can also banish monsters from your field and or either player's graveyard as fusion material, which is an insane ability just to deal with cards in our opponent's graveyard. And if this card is in your graveyard, you can target one of your banished Alistair the Invoker and shuffle it into the deck, and if you do, add this card back to your hand, which is an amazing ability just to be able to recycle our copy of Alistair, and it's just such a powerful effect. We then play 3 copies of Magical Meltdown. Meltdown is definitely a 3-of in the build because this card is Rhoda for Alistair, and when it's activated you get to add your copy of Alistair from your deck to your hand, and the activation of your cards and effects that include the effects to fusion summon a fusion monster cannot be negated. Also, your opponent's cards and effects cannot activate when a monster is fusion summoned this way, which is an insane effect to basically make it so your opponent doesn't respond to your fusions, which is such a powerful effect. This card is definitely a 3-of in the build. It's just so powerful in this deck. We then play a single copy of El Shaddoll Fusion. El Shaddoll Fusion is really cool as a 1-of in the build because this card helps out a lot to go in for a bunch of different fusion plays. Because this card is actually a quick play, we can set it to our side of the field to go in for the exact fusion monster at any time, which is so cool. We then play 3 copies of Shaddoll Fusion. Shaddoll Fusion is an insane fusion spell. This card is so powerful. It lets us fusion summon by using materials from the deck. It lets us fusion summon 1 Shaddoll Fusion monster from our extract using monsters from your hand or field as fusion material. But if your opponent controls a monster that was special summoned from the extract, you can also use monsters from your deck as fusion material, making this card one of the first broken fusion spells we ever got in the game. And it's so cool that you can actually use cards from the deck with this card's ability. This card is definitely a 3-of in the build, and a card you always want to see in your hand to go in for your fusion plays. We then play 3 copies of Nadir. Nadir is our searcher for our copy of Ecclesia, letting us send a monster from our extract to the graveyard, then add a Dogmatika monster or a Fallen of Allbats from your deck or your graveyard to your hand, which is why we just played the 1 copy of Ecclesia, because we can grab it back out of the graveyard with Nadir. And it also has a insane ability that you get to add the monster with attack less than or equal to the sent monster to the graveyard. Also for the rest turn, after this card resolves, you cannot special summon monsters from the extract, which is totally easy to do. You just resolve this card last. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get in to the traps. So for the traps, we're just going to be playing 2, and that's going to be a single copy of Shaddoll Incarnation and a single copy of Shaddoll Schism. These cards are really good at 1 each in the build. I really like Incarnation in this deck because it lets us target a Shaddoll monster in your graveyard and special summon it in face up or face down defense position. You can also banish this card and a Shaddoll card in your graveyard and then activate one of these effects to either change 1 face down monster that you control to face up defense position or change 1 face up monster you control to face down defense position, which is a really cool ability to use with this card. You also have your copy of Shaddoll Schism, which is an insane effect in this deck to be able to use, because during the main phase, you can fusion summon one Shaddoll fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing the fusion materials listed on it from your field or graveyard, but it cannot attack directly. Then you can send one monster to the graveyard that your opponent controls with the same attribute as the fusion monster that you just summoned, which is a really insane ability just to also deal with your opponent's cards. This card is really good to basically summon out your second copy of Winda to your side of the field, or use this card to react to your opponent because it is a trap card, which is just really, really cool. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to start off with Shaddoll Construct, my favorite fusion monster of all time. This card is an amazing card that's basically walking Foolish Burial and is an insane fusion monster that has 3 insane abilities that you can send a Shaddoll card from your deck to the graveyard when this card is summoned, and at the start of the damage step, if this card battles a special summon monster, destroy that monster, and if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can start a Shaddoll spell or trap card in your graveyard and add it to your hand, which is just such a powerful effect. We then play 2 copies of Winda. Winda is a really good floodgate to play as a 2-of in the build because this card has a really cool ability that it must first be fusion summoned and cannot be destroyed by an opponent's card effect, and each player can only special summon once per turn while this card is faced up on the field, which is such a powerful effect to lock down your opponent where they're only going to get 1 special summon, which is so cool. We then play 2 copies of Apocalypse. Apocalypse is great as a 2-of in the deck. You always play 2 in the build, 1 to send to the graveyard off its ability, and 1 to be able to summon to your side of the field. And what I mean by that is if this card is special summoned, you get to target a face-up card on the field and negate its effects. But if this card is sent to the graveyard, you get to add a Shaddoll card from your deck or graveyard to your hand, and then discard a card, meaning we can search out cards like Schism off this card's ability by sending this card to the graveyard off Nadir's Servant. It's just really, really good to be able to do that, and it's the main card I actually send to the graveyard so that I can actually get its ability to get to Schism and then use Schism during the opponent's turn to be able to summon out our copy of El Shaddoll Winda. We then play just a single copy of Makaba. I feel like you only need 1 copy of Makaba. This card is just a great walking negate to be able to play in the deck. Play a single copy of Purgatrio. Purgatrio is also really good in the build as a 1-of because this card is insane right now with so many fire decks running around. And it's really good because this card can basically attack all your opponent's monsters and does piercing damage. And it's just a really good OTK piece. Play a single copy of Caliga. Caliga is just so good. This card is kind of like Dark Door but insane. That if a player's monster effect attempts to activate, none of that player's monsters can activate their effects for the rest of the turn, meaning you're only going to get 1 effect. And then while this card is faceable in the field, each player can only attack with 1 monster during each battle phase, which is such a cool ability that you basically are just going to slow the game down to that point. We then play a single copy of the really big Invoked Fusion monster. I really like this card as a 1-of. It's such a powerful card to be able to just help you go in for game. Speaking of going in for game, we also play a single copy of Access Code because it's pretty easy to summon this card out to your side of the field. It's a really insane card that pops multiple cards on the field and comes out absolutely massive. Since all of the monsters we're pretty much playing in the deck are spellcasters, we also play a single copy of Selene because it's very easy to link climb into a copy of Access Code. Since we're playing a Fusion deck, we're playing a single copy of Cross Sheep because it's very easy to summon out Cross Sheep, then summon out Selene, and then summon out Access Code, which is just really cool to be able to do. We then play a single copy of Artemis. Artemis is really good to be able to normal summon out your copy of Alistair, and then once you summon out Alistair, you can link it away for this card, giving you a light target on your side of the field to make your copy of Makaba, which is really insane. We then play a single copy of Gravity Controller. Gravity Controller is for our copy of Construct because you summon out your copy of Construct to the extra monster zone, and then you link it away for Gravity Controller, being able to activate Construct's ability, which is so cool about this card. Plus, this card is just a really good 1-of in the extra deck. So that's it for the deck, guys. I would enjoy it. This deck is super fun to be able to play. If you guys have never played a fusion deck like this on Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, you should definitely give this deck a try. It's really fun to be able to play. You can summon out some insane fusion monsters, which is so cool, and I absolutely love the Shaddoll cards. So that's going to do for this one, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell notification, become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys on the next video. See you later, guys.